opening day at Saratoga. What does that mean? Is it like Christmas for horse racing enthusiasts?
It feels like a major holiday. I mean, it's funny this year because we were obviously here a month ago for the Belmont Stakes, which was an incredible weekend and oddly a dress rehearsal for this. But opening day of the meet is always just such a special day. And my first opening day was 50 years ago in 1974, and I've been to probably 45 or more opening days since then. I had to miss a few when I had a job, which was really awful. Um, but yeah, it's an amazing day. It's great to be back in Saratoga. It's such a happy place, as you guys well know.
Describe to our listeners about that because you grew up around this track and it is somewhat magical. It feels like you get transformed back in time. This is one of the oldest sports venues in the United States or sports venues in the world. Just tell everybody about like the stuff around the horse racing that's a little ancillary but a part of the charm, not just the track but the town of Saratoga.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's that old state saying, I think, from, is it Red Smith or Damon Run? I think it's Red Smith. You go up, you'd go up in the thruway from New York City, 190 miles. You take a right, and you go back 100 years. And it's so little has changed. It's still the same sort of ambiance in the backyard. And one of the nice things about the track is you see your friends that you've met over the years because people really come back to Saratoga. Tracks themselves aren't as attended as they used to be, but Saratoga, everybody comes, whether it's for a sustained period of time or a week here and a week there. But also, yeah, the town. I mean, we have a train track across the street we call the Oklahoma, where about half our horses are stabled. And that's a train track that has a dirt and turf track as well, where they train in the mornings. And that opens in April and stays open until the end of October. And, there are times you could go there in the off season, and it's hard to believe in the morning that we're not racing in the afternoon. There's so much activity. But, aside from that, Saratoga is a relatively small town. And, within a mile of the racetrack is the whole downtown scene where there's a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops for people to shop in the afternoons and things like that. Broadway itself, as I'm sure you've been on it, is extremely busy. It's not just the racetrack. You've also got SPAC, Performing Arts Center in the park. Dave Matthews there last weekend. Their concerts all summer long. The ballet's there, I think, this week. The Philadelphia Orchestra comes in August for part of the summer. And that's about a mile and a half from the track. Everything is basically within walking distance. You don't need to have a car if you don't want. You can just sort of walk around. And the town itself is great. The restaurants are fun. There's a great sort of synergy between the track and the town where, you go out at night, you see racing personalities, trainers, riders. And I think it's just a great atmosphere for people, morning, noon, and night.
Talking to Andy Serling, NYRA racing expert. You can hear him on Talking Horses with their expert picks, and that's going to go before these races. Tell me about some of the traditional races. I know today, opening day at Saratoga, you've got the 2-year-old fillies that are going to run. Is that sort of how the season goes, that a lot of these races are according to what you've been doing for 150 years?
Yeah, I mean, the state schedule, sometimes you make small changes. I think we're running the Jockey Club Gold Cup on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend this year. But in general, the things stay the same. And the Schuylerville, which is the opening day feature, drew a terrific field, I think, of 11 horses for 2-year-old fillies. And then on Saturday, we have the male equivalent, the Sanford, or the Cerno Special. I can never keep them straight. And we run stakes for the 2-year-olds, culminating at the end of the meet with the Spinaway, a grade 1 for fillies, and the Hopeful, a grade 1 for colts. And I think a lot of what happens in Saratoga in the summer is 2-year-olds start running, a lot of maiden races, many of the best ultimate 3-year-olds who are saying the Derby. I mean, the favorite for this year's Derby, though he obviously didn't run well, was Fierceness. Well, he debuted on the Friday before Travers. So you'll see a lot of the top horses will debut in Saratoga. And you sort of never know. It could be a Saturday, it could be a Wednesday or a Thursday. And 2-year-olds are a big part of the program, getting them started with their careers. And one of the exciting things is, you can go on sort of any day and you might see a horse that becomes famous over the course of his lifetime. And that's a fun thing. I can remember many horses I saw break their maidens that went on to winning colors. The filly that won the Derby, I saw her break her maiden here. It's part of the thrill of Saratoga, but there's a stake race thing pretty much every day. There's the Coronation Cup for the 3-year-old fillies in the turf on Thursday. I think Saturday there's 3 stakes. We're running one, the Kelso on the turf for a mile for older horses. We're running the 2-year-old race I mentioned, where Pierce's full brother is actually the favorite, Mentee. And we're also running the Diana, which has a big 10-horse field, a mile and eighth, a grade one. It's our first grade one of the meet on the turf. And, they're grade ones every weekend and just huge races. I think we run about 18 grade ones during the course of the meet. So it's a lot of quality racing. And if the weather holds up, the racing's great. And it feels like a good chance that maybe opening day won't be spoiled by weather, as the storm that has been predicted. It may miss us.
As Dib said, you can see this guy every race day at Talking Horses. It's a tradition of mine. Before I start my picks, I always watch Serling on Talking Horses and then see him all the time on FS1, as Andy calls it, the Big Fox. Big Fox is taking over for some of these major stake races. Go ahead. What you got?
Yeah. We're on FS1, FS2, pretty much the entire meet. There may be an hour here and there on a sporadic day or two where we start at 2 or something, but for the most part, every single race is shown on our Saratoga Live show, which broadcasts all day long. There are six Saturdays, not this Saturday, but starting the following Saturday, we'll be on for, I think, 2.5 to 3.5 hours on Big Fox, the major Fox network. And those will be covering the main stakes. I mean, the biggest race days here are the first Saturday of August, which is the Whitney, a huge race for older horses, one of the most important races in the country. Last year was won by the eventual Breeders' Cup Classic winner, White Barrio. The Alabama, which is the third Saturday in August, that's sort of the ultimate 3-year-old filly race. I mean, they talk about the Kentucky Oaks, and while that's an important race the day before the Derby, the Alabama's been run for, I think, over 140 years. And it's really the oldest and most important mile-and-a-quarter race for 3-year-old fillies. And then the following week is the Travers, which is the sort of known as, they call it the Midsummer Derby, even though for some reason they call it that. It's the Late Summer Derby. And, it's not a Triple Crown race, but it can be that kind of prestigious race. And potentially the winners of all 3 Triple Crown races and many others could meet up this year in it. So that's a huge day. And then we have, the closing week, which closes out with a big bang. But there are, major races every single weekend and stakes throughout the week. And the racing is fun. And I mean, it's a place where if you just walk around Saratoga, even if it's a rainy day, you walk around and people are having a good time. And it seems like in this world, there aren't enough places where you walk around and you see a lot of people smiling and having fun. And it's really one of the great things about Saratoga. It's a happy place for everybody.
Andy, as far as the horses and the heat, and like you said, there's impending weather systems that are coming in and things like that. Is there a temperature that the horses maybe don't run, or is there any kind of weather that the horses don't run in?
Well, there's a couple of situations. I think we've had over the last about 20 years 2 cancellations due to heat. It's something to do with the heat index, if it gets like over 105 or 10. I don't know the exact numbers, but there is a cutoff point where we would run. But, I mean, listen, it's summer. There's going to be warm days. There are always hoses and water available after the races to hose the horses down, So there's always people ready and always ready to cool the horses out. I mean, even on a day that may not be super hot, right? So we're always taking those precautions, and we take that very seriously. And the last thing we'll ever do is run a situation where it's just not safe for the horses. As far as you asked me another question. Weather stuff. Yeah, if there's lightning in the area, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something like 8 or 10 miles. If there's lightning within that, that area, we have to wait a certain period of time. And people will notice there will be, 2 or 3 times during the meet where a big storm will move through. And if there's lightning, there will be a delay. And if the delay is 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. If it's an hour, it's an hour. We're never going to sort of say, well, we're trying to get the card ended, so we'll run with some lightning around. No, that will not happen. And listen, occasionally, as you know, up here, there are huge storms, and we've had some delays at different times. But you hope for the best.
Let's get down and dirty here. I'm trying to divorce myself a speed rating this year when it comes to Saratoga. Here, I'm going to just ask you this in a broad, general question because I know we're short on time. I feel like Chad Brown, you got to put him in the field if we're on dirt. On turf.
Sure.
Todd Pletcher, you got to have his horses in the field if we're on dirt. Michael Maker, you got to have his horses in the first half, especially the July meets more so than the August meets. Am I right on all those things that I've said so far?
You're not wrong, but I think one of the great myths about Chad Brown is he only wins the turf. The guy's won 2 Preaknesses in the last 7 years. So, and his numbers on the dirt are very similar to his numbers on turf. He's just known for having a lot of better turf horses over the years. He's also run some very good 2-year-olds that have won their debuts up here over the years, whether they were Practical Joke or, a horse Blazing Sevens who finished second in the Preakness last year. He broke his maiden as a 2-year-old his first start. So you got to be careful with those things. It's interesting you say that about Maker. And you're right. Maker had a meet, was it last year, where he was on fire? Maybe it was 2 years ago for the first 3 to 4 weeks, and then he just sort of ran out of ammo. But Mike's a dangerous trainer, and I think you always want to look for trainers that come out kind of hot, And one of the things that happens at Saratoga is we get a lot of shippers, a lot of people coming from Kentucky. And I always try to pay a lot of attention to how they're doing in general. Are the Kentucky horses running well? Are the Kentucky horses sort of random? Some will run well, some not. And some years they don't do well. And I think you want to pay attention to the trainers that are able to ship in and have success, because some will and some won't. So I try to do that. But I think at the end of the day, you want to try to find horses that, if you bet Chad Brown and Todd Pletcher all the time, you're going to bet a lot of short-priced horses. So you want to try to find some kind of under-the-radar trainers, guys who win or gals who win, like a Linda Rice,
right?
And try to get better prices in those situations. The Irad Ortiz is a great jockey, but this is an incredible jockey colony.
Right.
And Irad is the most habitually overbet rider I've ever seen in my life. I thought Irad rode great when we just left Aqueduct for our meeting there. I think his ROI, a $2 win bet on every horse he rode, you got about $1.15 back for every $2. Whereas Flavian Pratt, who's a sensational rider, he was close to $2 because he doesn't take the kind of money that Irad has. And if you're, habitually betting horses that should be paying $10 and they're paying $7, you're going to lose over the long term. So don't go there and say, I'm just going to bet Irad Ortiz. Don't be that person. You want to bet jockey? Bet Flavian Pratt.
Andy, enjoy, man. 71 stake races this weekend. This summer. It starts tomorrow with opening day at Saratoga, and we really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about it.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I hope I see you guys this summer. I look forward to it.
Man, thank you so much, sir.